Hello, today I am feeling very guided to make a video talking about suffering. It's a very, very big topic, and there are so many different directions for how we could approach this topic, but I'm just going to talk, have a nice little heart to heart, and hopefully get across what I want to get across. So, suffering. I'm sure you've probably heard it, but many individuals say that the root of suffering is attachment. And I do agree. I can understand. But what I want to talk about is a perspective on suffering that I feel like I don't hear this enough. And I'm going to share it. I think that there is another side to suffering that a lot of people overlook, and I think that it takes a lot of faith to see this perspective, because what this perspective is that just because something troubling is happening or something is triggered, there could be a bigger reason behind why this is happening, and this bigger reason could ultimately be a blessing or a good thing. And that's what I want to talk about. How suffering has a silver lining. For me personally, during the different points in my life where I had the most suffering, I can also reflect and say that I've also experienced a close relationship with God during those times in my life as well. And, you know, when things are good, sometimes you're not really thinking because you're okay with how everything is. But when you experience an expectation that's not met and you want something a different way, you know, it's very easy to be like, God, why is this happening to me? What do I need to do? What am I overlooking? Give me a sign. And yeah, I think that when we suffer, it is for a reason. And I think that there is a learning lesson that can be hidden within the suffering that oftentimes we may overlook if we are not going with the flow with our higher self and with God. You know, sometimes our egos blind us from something that can be a little more beautiful. Yeah. I think that it definitely is more challenging when we feel like our survival is being threatened. It's way more challenging to have faith and know that you'll be provided for. And I think that it takes a lot of faith to feel completely safe when you have nothing. It's possible, but it probably takes a lot of energy and work. I think that all of us, I'm going to say it, all of us, I think such a small amount don't, and they're probably not even on the computer, but I think we all have trauma that we store inside of our bodies. I think that our bodies hold a lot of memory, and I think that whether it was small or whether it was big, it doesn't matter. It still could have affected us greatly. And I think that it is stored within us. And I think a lot of the time, it's not even conscious. It might be repressed so deep down, you might be in complete denial. And that's okay, you know. Somebody telling you, it probably isn't going to shake you out of that. But, yeah, I think that when we're ready, I think that these things start to surface. And I mean, these could be things that surface from previous lifetimes, from childhood. We could be wounded children, and these traumas or trauma can develop later in our life, and it might not be immediate. So yeah, I think that when different triggers or strong emotions start to surface, I think that it is a guide. It is showing us something. It is showing us ourselves, and we have this chance in that moment to get to know ourselves and to get to know our triggers and to understand why exactly might you feel the way that you do, or why might you be reacting the way that you are. Suffering. I think that if there's one thing that I don't hear enough, it's that it's not about making suffering try to disappear. It's about accepting suffering and learning how to live with suffering. I feel like in the spiritual community, holy crap, it seems like everybody's afraid of these emotions of being vulnerable or scared or angry, you know. It's like we tend to isolate ourselves, and I think how we work with the suffering that we feel is so important, you know, to learn that we can love that emotion, we can accept it, we can sit with it, we can fully see it and understand it is so important, that it isn't to be avoided, or you shouldn't feel ashamed if you feel a specific emotion. And you're probably only going to experience it more if that's the case anyway. So yes, suffering. We all suffer. We all have it. And it's not a bad thing, and we don't have to run from it. It can be for a reason, that is that our egos didn't allow us to see it, and then later down the line we see the grace or the silver lining. It could be an opportunity to heal these wounds and triggers and traumas that we have stored inside of ourselves, our souls, our energy bodies. It could be an opportunity to become closer with God. It could be an opportunity to break us down. That's something that a lot of people probably don't talk about, but might think. Shakespeare's King Lear is really popular. It was of a king that was extremely prideful, and he lost everything and was in the rain at night crying completely alone. And, you know, the whole purpose of the story was to show that his ego needed to be broken. And sometimes you gotta hit rock bottom. And I think that, honestly, no matter what the reason of suffering is, and it might be impossible to see, but I think that it's for a reason. And ultimately that it is a blessing and a good thing. So what are you going to do? Next time you feel suffering, are you going to become reactive and isolated, feel alone and avoided? Or are you going to show yourself? Are you going to accept it and accept seeing it yourself so that others can see it, so you could feel connected and know you're not alone and work through things? Just remember, even this will pass. Everything passes, and life has its ups and its downs, and it's how we handle it. when we look at like those insane yogi masters that seem so liberated and centered, it's because they learned how to handle suffering. Not because they made it disappear, but because they held this perspective that there's something greater behind our tiny little opinion and self. Namaste.